Welcome to our introduction. First, we have our trivia for today. Do you know that sarcasm boosts your creativity? You may not think of sarcasm as the most endearing habit or quality. If you tend to have a sarcastic sense of humor, you've probably been told to tone it down at least. Now, let's head on to our agendas for today. You will be able to know what is literature. You can learn how to classify the different types of literature. All of your questions about literature will be answered. For our topic, we have classification of literature. What are the more literary genres? The four main literary genres are poetry, fiction, non-fiction, and drama, with each varies in style, structure, subject matter, and the use of figurative language. Here we have a graphic organizer below that shows literature how it's classified. Literature we have prose and poetry. In prose we have fiction and non-fiction. In fiction we have folk tales, fables, legend, fairy tales, myth, parable, short story, anecdote, satire, novel, novelette, drama, and play. In non-fiction we have autobiography, biography, diary, memoirs, essay, letter. Poetry have narrative poetry, epic, ballad, metric tales. Lyric poetry, we have ode, elegy, sonnet, and dramatic poetry. Now, what is poetry? Poetry is a literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feelings and ideas by the use of distinctive style and rhythm. Poems collectively or as a genre of literature. What is prose? Prose is a form of written or spoken language that usually exhibits a natural flow of speech and grammatical structure. A related narrative device is the stream of consciousness which also flows naturally but is not concerned with syntax. Examples of prose are the following: novel, novelettes, short stories, legends, contemporary dramas, legends, fables, essays, anecdotes, news, and speeches. And here we have fiction and non-fiction. These are the two major classifications of a literature, the fiction and non-fiction. Non-fiction stories are true. They tell a story of a person's life or even narrate a series of events. Fiction stories are not true. In fiction stories, at least. Fiction. Novel is a fiction. It is relatively long work of narrative fiction, which considerable number of characters and setting. We have novelette, a short novel, typically one that is light and romantic or sentimental in character. A prose narrative that is more elaborate than a short story but can also be read in one sitting and can produce a single concentrated effect. Short story, a short narrative which usually involves one or more major characters, one plot, and a single conflict. Next we have is a legend, the story about the origin of things. The characters are normally fictitious. Example, the legend of a titan. I don't know if there's a example like that, but it's an example. It is fiction. Lastly, we have myth, fictional tale about god and goddesses. Example is the Greek gods, the 12 great Greek gods. Next, we have fables. It have animals and other inanimate things that are gifted with human attributes as characters. Example, the bunny and the turtle. Anecdotes, short humorous stories about animals or children. Fairy tale, it is a short story that presents folkloric characters such as fairies, goblins, elves, and other unusual creatures. Next we have folk tales. They are also called migratory tales. Folk tale is a story which consists of one or a combination of many folklore themes, which is called motifs. They are handed from They are handed from generation to generation through word of mouth and spread all over the world. B. Nonfiction. Autobiography, a combination of three Greek words, auton, which means self, bio means life, and graphein to write. It tells about the author's own life story. Next is biography. It is a written account of another person's life. Journal. It is a chronological presentation of life events. It includes the writer's observations, feelings, and experiences. Next is essay. Essays are classified into formal and informal. They usually express the opinions of the writer about an event, people, or things. We have narrative poetry. Epic. Epic is a long narrative poetry in which a series of heroic adventures are presented. Next is ballad. It is a short narrative poem intended to be sung. A well-known example of this is Lord Randall, a traditional Scottish ballad, which employs a lot of repetition all throughout. Next is metric tale. It is a narrative poem written in verse. Its characters are ordinary people concerned with ordinary events. Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer is its best example. Next, we have metrical romance. Is a long rambling love story in verse. The themes of most stories are chivalry or knighthood, romantic love, and religious elements. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Next, we have is lyric poetry. Ode. It is a song of praise for something or for someone. Elegy. It is a song of lamentation. Its usual theme is about death of a loved one. Song. It is also accompanied by music, sacred and secular songs. Simple lyric includes all lyric poems that do not fall under any of the four types. Next is sonnet. It is a poem of 14 lines. It's a poem containing of 14 lines. Here is an example of Shakespearean sonnet. English sonnet written in iambic pentameter lines. It presents and develops its theme in the first three quatrains and states a conclusion in the couplet or the last two lines. This example of Sonnet 24. Mine eye hath played the painter and hath stilled the beauties formed in table of my heart. My body is the frame wherein it's held, and perspective that is best painter's art. From through the painter must you see his skills, to find where your true image pictured lies, which in my bosom shop is hanging still, that hath his windows glazed with thine eyes. Now see what good turns eyes for eyes have done. Mine eyes have drawn thy shape, and thine for me are windows to my breast, where through the sun delights to peep, to gaze therein on thee. Yet eyes, this cunning want to gaze their art. They draw but what they see, no, not the heart. This is an example of Petrarchan or Italian sonnet. It contains an octave and a set A B B A A B A C D E C D E pattern, where any of the following themes are presented. Octave contains 8 lines: problem, hope, or desire. Sestet contains 6 lines, presents the resolution or conclusion. Thank you for watching. Let's check for part 2. See you guys.